Hi, Phil Aston here from Now Spinning Magazine, and this video, which is an impromptu video in a way, I've just decided to sit down in front of the camera, is about the Deep Purple family. And I've just done two videos at the time that this is going out, with Pete Bardot at the Sea of Tranquility and also with Martin Popoff as well. And there's literally two interviews, podcasts, whatever. One of them looked at bands that were famous in their own countries, and there was also Peter from Australia as well, and they weren't really that well known around the world. And also we did one with Martin and Peter looking at the Deep Purple family. I found these incredibly enjoyable things to do, so thank you, special thanks to Pete Bardot from the Sea of Tranquility for inviting me onto the channel. But it also made me go off and then listen to various albums that I haven't played for a while. Some of these I've spoken about before, but because I've been playing them, I just wanted to share some memories and some thoughts, really. So I'll start first of all with the first one, where we looked at bands that were famous in our own lands but not elsewhere, or not as big, if you know what I mean. And I'd mentioned Slade, and I've just tried to pick one album from each thing that I'm talking about rather than go through catalogues, because otherwise this video will be longer than a 2-week holiday in a far off land. And I chose Sladest because it's the one in the UK. I could have chosen Slade. I did get this one out just in case, but all the kids at school had this, but I didn't like everything on it. Whereas this, in a way, was a greatest hits album, although marketed in such a way that he didn't think it was. And the reason why is because Slade were a singles band, primarily. They released single after single, went straight to number one. So this was like the first album that scooped up all those hits. So "Cause I Love You," spelled C-O-Z. "Look What You Done," "What," spelled W-O-T, and pointed this out for our American friends who think, what, couldn't these guys spell it? It was done deliberately. But you have to remember that seeing things like "Mama We're All Crazy," C-R-A-Z-E-E, of course, is quite right, I made a big hit with this. My parents hated it. There I was at school trying to learn how to write and spell, and all of a sudden this band comes along and invents a new language. I thought it was fantastic. But this band were a stepping stone. Later on in the 80s, they became more of a full-on rock band, especially when Reading 1980. But at this point, they were a stepping stone between like Sweet, Wizard, T-Rex, Mud, towards more grown-up rock and roll. And so the next point of call, the next band I mentioned on that video was Status Quo. And I've chosen Quo as my favourite from '74. Pile Driver was the first time I really started to appreciate Status Quo. Big Fat Mama, Paper Plane, and of course Hello, which had Caroline on it 4,500 times. But it was this one which really grabbed my imagination. Backwater, Just Take Me, which wasn't the typical Status Quo rhythm and chord sequences. It was a bit different. Break the Rules was that was the single. But Drifting Away, written by Parfit Lancaster, 5 minutes and 5 seconds. I reckon that's the heaviest song they ever did. Drifting Away. It's just absolutely spot on. And then Don't Think It Matters, great riff. Fine, 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 Lonely Man. Oh, it's a beautiful, beautiful song, which I didn't really appreciate at the time, to be honest. And Slow Train, which is the typical, starts just as you expect Status Quo. Oh, dunk, 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 dunk. That's what you want, isn't it? But it's also got a great drum solo in it, and it just builds and builds and builds. Was that 7 minutes? Yeah, nearly 8 minutes long that was. I just love the artwork. I just thought it was really clever. It was a kid at school. I had that on a patch on the back of his denim jacket. I just thought it was fantastic. And yes, I do everything I'm showing you. I've got on CD, but it was just easier to find these and they're bigger to show on the screen. But I just loved that album, and obviously what came next on the level, I got Down on it, which is probably my favourite Status Quo song. But the album didn't gel with me as much. And Blue for You, the tide was turning, although it's still a great album. And yes, I know there's a live one as well. But this was the one, so that's one I've played this week. My third choice was bands that were massive here but not as big elsewhere, was Whitesnake, which I said at the time was, when people went, Whitesnake are enormous. They are. But the first part of the Whitesnake story wasn't. The pinnacle of that period for Whitesnake was this album. I bought Fall For You Loving on a single, and the cover lit up in the dark, and I thought it was the best thing they'd done. I've been championing Whitesnake from the solo albums, come on Whitesnake, you can do it, and Trouble came out and it was alright, but the production was a bit flat. The CD remaster fixes that, but live, unbelievable. Love Hunter came out, again, it didn't feel as if it, Love Is Worth the Blues is a great track, but I was having to cherry pick songs to play to my friends to say, look, Whitesnake are really good. Live, awesome. So when this came out, I felt like the stars had aligned and they were ready. Sweet Talker, Reading William, great track. Carry Or Load, very much like Free. Blind Man, even more like Free. But of course that was from... And this was a reworking of a track from the first solo album. I don't think this is a patch on the version from his solo album, just called David Coverdale's Whitesnake, but it's good. And this was probably the first album where John Lord sounded like he was involved more, because having John Lord in the band, I thought, oh wow, and Ian Paice, it's like the Perps. It's like Deep Purple coming around every 3 times a year with Gillan and Rainbow. But John Lord's involvement was more, he wasn't the same as what he was in Purple. Ain't Gonna Cry No More is an epic song that everyone should hear. That synthesizer solo, talking about John Lord, the little motif there, it's fantastic. Love Man, Black and Blue, probably down a notch perhaps, and She's a Woman, great, great fast rock song, again, lovely Moog motif in there as well. The cover, designed by Dave Cull, I believe, it could have been better, couldn't it? But again, it's very iconic now. And again, the CD version of this comes with extra tracks, and it's superb. So the other thing I've been involved with, of course, was the Deep Purple family stuff. And we had to choose in what order we liked things. So obviously for me, it's Deep Purple. Sit at the top with their catalogue that goes on wider than this screen. And then Gillan, because of the inventiveness, the just wild rock and roll style of that band. Not the Ian Gillan band, which I love, and I'll be a separate video, but Gillan. And in fact, where that started for me was I used to go and see the Ian Gillan band loads, because they were on the Birmingham Odeon nearly all the time. They just seemed to come round over and over again. And each time they came round, the audience seemed to get smaller. And then when they went to play Barbarella's, I didn't go because I felt, I don't want to see one of my heroes down on his knees. And one of my friends went, and I said this in the Sea of Tranquility video. They said it's not the same band, and it was this band, it was this album they were pushing, which didn't come out. It took me years to find this album, known as the Japanese album, simply called Gillan. It's immense. Colin Towns, one of the best composers in the universe as far as I'm concerned, wonderful guy, so talented. I think there was a point in the 80s and 90s where everything that was on the TV, the music was written by him. And Second Sight, Secret of the Dance, I'm Your Man, Dead of Night, Fighting Man, which the version was so perfect on this that they just copied it over from Mr. Universe. Message in a Bottle, Not Weird Enough, Bring Joanna Back, Abbey of Thelema, Back in the Game. These tracks many of them would appear on For Gillan Fans Only on Glory Road, but this was like the holy grail, trying to find this album. It came out on RPM Records in 1993 on CD, and I don't think it's been out since. But absolutely superb. And of course, for us in the UK, it was this in 1979. This is Ian Gillan standing in the sea wearing Wellingtons just out of shot. But this, to me, is one of the finest albums from any member of Deep Purple. This is a fantastic rock album. Second Sight, Secret of the Dance, She Tears Me Down, Roller. So Purple. That is so Purple. Mr. Universe. And of course Bernard Tormé. This guy that dressed like a pirate, different coloured hair, bandanas, throwing his guitar around, sounding like Hendrix plugged into the mains and morphing into the Sex Pistols. It was just incredible, and the guy was incredible. And then you got John McCoy with half his shaved head, you know, a big guy. Obviously went on to being Mammoth, pogoing up the one end of the stage. You know, Colin Towns dressed like a coming out of a gentleman's club with his smoking jacket on. Mick Underwood firing away at the back, and Gillan out front. This album is fantastic, and the production is it's so different. It's so in tune with the times. I'd said on the other day that Mr. Universe, there were parts where the drums disappear into the mix, where Torme does that solo guitar part with his dive-bombing tremolo arm. It's just distortion. But it is this. This is just a masterpiece of hard rock. It really, really is. So that was my choice from Gillan, and I absolutely adore it. Other things that I'd mentioned was, I'd mentioned if it was Rainbow, I'd pick Rainbow Rising, but I've done an extensive video on Rainbow Rising on this channel, so I didn't really want to repeat myself. And Pete mentioned On Stage. Now this, I have a lot of powerful memories attached to this, because I remember the first time I heard a track from it was from a rock club in Yardley in Birmingham, where they played Mistreated on a Sunday night, and the way the guitar starts, the really fast, triplets on that one string and that one note, that's pure Blackmore from that period. It started playing like that from the Burn tour only in '74, but here it was refined and loud, and you just thought, wow. I remember Sounds had said something like, proves that the old wave, because punk was all around at this point, didn't stand a chance. It was absolutely incredible. Just a simple gatefold. It came with the inner sleeves with like more pictures on and stuff. It was a very short album. I mean, as I talking about Mistreated, it was about 12 minutes long. And there were some of the other songs like Man on Silver Mountain were curtailed with blues, and Star Trek was half a track. Kill the King, of course, was a song we'd only heard live. If this had Stargazer on it, as Pete said, it would have been an absolute 10 out of 10 classic. But this was such an important album to me. It's a very short album. It certainly fits on one CD very easily. And I'll do a separate video on the deluxe edition. But I played this over and over again. I just felt that, Blackmore was on fire on this. They missed off the drum solo, which I'm fairly pleased about. I know Cozy Powell fans might not be. But 16th Century Greensleeve, Still Am Sad, and Dio. Dio is on fire, isn't he, on this? Absolutely. Catch the Rainbow takes up a whole of a side. A great, great album. So that was my Rainbow choice out of the second batch. And the other... For Purple, I'd mentioned Burn, but I've covered that extensively on this channel. I might do it again from a different angle, but I thought another one I didn't mention was Made in Europe, and this has got very great memories. I'm going to do a separate video on this, looking at every single variation and all the different, where this concert came from, all the different ones you can get. And there is supposed to be a super deluxe version of this coming out, but of course it's currently on hold. But I first heard 2 tracks from this on the Alan Freeman show. I'd come home from Bogart's, a rock pub in the town, and because I knew that I'd get home for 2 o'clock in the afternoon when Alan Freeman came on, and he said he was going to play tracks from a new Deep Purple live album. Remember, then we heard about things like this from either the Sounds or the music papers like Melody Maker, NME, or from a radio station. We didn't have the internet. So there's a new Deep Purple live album coming out. And he played Burn, and he segued it straight into Stormbringer without talking. And probably the 2 best moments. I think Alan Freeman said something, well, when you hear the live versions, it makes you wonder about the studio version. It was just incredible. And it was rawer sound than live in London, which is the only Mark III stuff I had at that time. And it was a single album, which is disappointing. But it really is a fantastic piece of work. It really, really is. I still is one of my favourite live albums. Man in Japan creeps ahead. But this is, you know, great stuff. And what else did we talk about? Then, of course, I was thinking about Whitesnake. Pete had mentioned that this one, 1987, is his favourite Whitesnake album, if not one of his favourite rock albums of all time. When this happened, I thought Whitesnake were finished. Before this, sorry, I'll rewind. They've released Saints and Sinners, which I know Martin Popoff likes it a lot. I thought it was over. I thought the front cover was dreadful. I thought just having a picture of David on the back wasn't fair on the rest of the band. I thought the songs, you know, those kind of like Dancing Girls type songs, I just thought whole of side 2 for me was like, I just couldn't listen to it. I just thought it was barroom boogie, as if they'd run out of ideas. And considering what was going on in the 80s, I thought they're over. I always felt that Whitesnake, in a way, were very patchy albums in many ways, apart from Ready and Willing. So it was over. And then a friend of mine came home with a 12-inch single by Whitesnake with Still of the Night on it. And he said, Phil, have you heard this? He said, it's the new Whitesnake single. And I thought, no, I haven't, and I'm not really interested. He said, listen to this. So he drops the needle down on the 12-inch single of Still of the Night. I couldn't believe it. That riff, which I immediately thought, it's just Zeppelin. It's channeling Zeppelin. Did it matter? Because Zeppelin didn't sound like that. They went around then, and somebody was doing that with a riff that was, and the vocals and the mid-section, and the fact it went on and on, but you wanted it to. I thought, game that back. No, that whatever's going on here, because of course you couldn't see them. Whatever's going on here, this is not the Whitesnake I knew. So I bought this, and John Sykes, of course, in the UK, was a up-and-coming star. You know, he'd arrived from Tigers of the Pantang, he'd gone from there to Thin Lizzy and given them their heaviest album, and now he was here. This was a fantastic record. There are some bits that were a bit too kind of forced to me, in a way. Bad Boys was a bit, titles, lyrics, that kind of thing, but I guess with David Coverdale, you know what to expect. But of course it had Here I Go Again on, which is a USA remix, and it was very, very different, and I did think it was an improvement. And also Crying in the Rain, which we knew about. But you know what, my favourite track on this album, and it's a track that I play more than any other track on this album, and I play a lot, I really, really do, and it is Don't Turn Away. Don't Turn Away off this album is one of my favourite Whitesnake tracks ever, and I can focus in like a laser beam to literally the last 2 minutes or minute and a half, when the song turns a corner and you know you're coming to the end, and Coverdale starts to ad-lib. He lets go of the rail and just does what Paul Rodgers did on Bad Company and Free, and just sings. And I so wish that they just kept the faders up and let that roll on. David, I mean, I haven't heard the Super Deluxe box sets and all the outtakes. Was that there? I mean, what happened? Could you keep that running? Don't Turn Away, the end bit when Coverdale starts to really feel and start to say, whoever this woman is that's turned away from him, give him another chance, and you just feel for him. Great track. What else did I have on here? I don't think there's anything else, was there, just before I go? Oh, there was. I just thought I'd just mention just some outliers of the Deep Purple family, which I'm going to cover in future videos. I've done Tommy Bolin, I've done Teaser, but I probably need to redo it. This is the one, remember those, anyone who bought this where it says Tommy Bolin, guitarist of Deep Purple, which they stuck on the front? Essential listening for anybody, this. Every home should have one of those. Well, all of these really. But one of my favourite guitarists and one of the best solo albums by anyone ever. We didn't mention Glenn Hughes in the Deep Purple family discussion, and we should have done, because he was the member he's had a career, because every member of Deep Purple is famous and have had a successful career. But the one album by Hughes I wanted to mention was Hughes Thrall, from, was it 1982? Yeah, 1982. A classic. I thought it's also available on Rock Candy Records on CD, and it's just a wonderful album. I mean, it's got funk, it's AOR, it's melodic rock, but Muscle and Blood, what a riff. And of course, First Step of Love, you can see why he was called the voice of rock. He sings so high that literally only dogs and cats can hear him on that, but it's brilliant. Of course, he was struggling a bit with some substance abuses, but it's a great album. And the only other two I want to mention, which I've mentioned again in a separate video, is Paice, Ashton, Lord, Malice in Wonderland. This is the double with the unreleased second album on vinyl. Again, it's available on CD. And this is one of my favourite albums of all time as well. And as I said, there's a video within the channel where I've covered that. And the last one, the one I haven't covered on the video yet, but I'm going to because I've got so much stuff to show you with this one, is Roger Glover's Butterfly Ball, which has a cast of thousands on it, from Dio to David Coverdale to Glenn Hughes, who isn't on it. Eddie Harding, Les Binks, Mo Foster, who's unfortunately recently passed away. But absolutely tons of stuff, and that's the Butterfly Ball, Roger Glover. So lots of stuff there. So that's what I've been listening to mainly this week, thanks to Peter and the Sea of Tranquility, which has really inspired me to go back through these classic albums. So let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what you've been listening to, and I shall talk to you very, very soon. Oh, remember, music is the healer and the doctor. So stay safe, keep spinning those discs, and I shall see you very, very soon.